if you see all of the obstacles, you'll never do it. You'll never do it. You'll never start the business. Yeah, you'll never propose.
Yeah.
You know, you'll never become a parent. Like if you see like all of the challenges ahead,
Yeah.
like, I can't face that mountain.
Yeah.
I'm like, no,
yeah.
we can do this. Actually, we can do this, and we did. We got there. We figured it out. There were obstacles, but we navigated it, and we navigated it together, which was crucial.
Really important. Yeah. Hi, and welcome to Conversations with Nick, a podcast that invites remarkable, everyday people to share their experience of navigating life, love, and leadership. I'm Nick Ferguson, and I'm really, really excited that you're able to join us today for a conversation that I believe will really speak to anyone who's ever faced a major life transition or wondered what it takes to lead well across different cultures and contexts. Today's guest, a very good friend of mine, is both a senior leader within education and international teacher, and he's also worked across the UK, the Middle East, and Central Eastern Europe. He's a globe trotter, originally from Dulwich, Southeast London, my neck of the woods. Love it, never gonna change. In 2018, he made a bold decision to move abroad with his wife and children, his 3 children, spending 7 years working in the international private education sector before recently returning to the United Kingdom. His journey is one of embracing uncertainty, learning to lead across cultures, and navigating the challenges of keeping family grounded while building a career on the move. So without further ado, I want to reinvite and welcome my friend Darren Goode to the podcast. Hey, Darren.
Hi, Nick. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. I really appreciate that. I was expecting some cheers in the background, like, you know, cute audience cheer, you know. Confetti falling.
You know what I mean? No, it's really good to have you on the podcast, bro. You know, we've been wanting to do this for a while, and I'm really excited, you know, about just hearing what you're going to share and what you have to bring, because you've done so much. You've done so much, and you continue to.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Well, let me start by just asking you a question that just helps viewers and listeners to get a sense of who you are, and it's simply, in summary, who's Darren Goode?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I'm a father of 3, 14-year-old, 15-year-old actually. Sorry, she'll kill me for that. A 13-year-old, and a 10-year-old. And yeah, I'm a husband, married to Ade, and yeah, I'm an international educator. I recently returned from international education back to the UK. So that kind of sums up who I am, you know, what I do in a nutshell.
All right. So tell us a little bit about, how did you come to do what you do? You know, so a young black man from South London, Dulwich, to international education, and then back to the UK. So just tell us a little bit about how, what's the backstory there?
Yeah. I think like a sort of pivotal moment for me was when I got my GCSE results, and I'd done quite well. So kind of growing up South London, with the rest of my peers, in terms of our aspirations and stuff, like none of us were really looking at university as a kind of viable option. Like it wasn't a conversation that was in our households. It wasn't a conversation that, you know, like we had in our like peer group. And I was kind of drifting through school. I never really found school that challenging. Like there's certain parts are a bit challenging, maybe socially challenging sometimes. Like academically, like not that challenging. And I think when I got my GCSE result, that was a point where I thought, oh, actually, you know, I'm no academic rock star, but I'm quite capable actually. And they, you know, sitting down with like our head of year and stuff, and he said, you know, you've done pretty well here. These are your options. And just that word options, like what do you mean? Options? Like, I can go route A, route B, route C. So I chose to go down A-level route, and from there, I think it was like almost like turning the ignition, like turning the key in an ignition. Like the motor gets started, and you think, okay, actually, what's our destination now? Okay, the next step is university. I've got options now, and these options look good. It kind of spurred me to want to get into education. I thought to myself, actually, if I can be on the other side, like somebody's given me options, like through how they've taught me, through how they've guided me. Like, if I could be on the other side for kids who look like me, kids who don't look like me, kids from similar backgrounds, actually, if I can be on the other side of that in supporting them to have options, how powerful is that? And that's when I became interested in like a career in education. And I thought, okay, I'll get a university degree. I'll do a PGCE, for those who don't know, postgraduate certificate in education, and become a teacher, because that, what an impactful role to, shape like young people and be able to put them on a path that's going to, give them options in the future, and help them to realize their dreams. So yeah, that was the kind of turning point for me, really.
Yeah, fantastic. So a key word there was options, and recognizing where you had capacity and capability to be able to do more, but somebody helped you to see that you had options. Another thing you mentioned, which I want to come back to, the options and the kind of significant figures, which may tie into what you just shared. Academically, you said actually you recognized that you were okay. You had some capabilities. You said you wasn't an academic rock star, although you've done really well. but you recognized that you had some capability. But you mentioned that there was maybe socially there was a bit of a struggle. That was maybe a bit more challenging. Can you say a little bit more about what that was like in terms of your experience socially in school, and where that might have been more of a challenge for you?
Yeah, I think navigating difficult, sometimes dangerous social situations, like growing up in urban communities where there's violence, there's drugs, there's sometimes a fractious or fraught relationship with the police. Like I remember significant moments that really kind of shook me up, like being stopped and searched as a young kid on the street. That does something. There's a conditioning that can happen where actually you start to feel unsafe. Not only unsafe from maybe peers or being caught up in gang culture, but also being unsafe on the streets, particularly with the people who are meant to protect you, which is the police. So I found that was really difficult. I had friends who, unfortunately, they had chosen like the wrong path, involved in gangs, involved in crime. And for some of my peers, that was the option,
Right.
And I guess to a degree for me, not that I ever really considered that, but that could have been a path. That was a potential path. So yeah, those were some of the really tricky social situations to navigate. Watching people get caught up in violence and street crime and all kinds of different sort of just kind of criminal activities. Actually, that was hard.
Yeah. So interesting, the word option came again. This idea that you had an alternative option. I just wonder how did it feel, I guess, separating yourself at some level from what was happening with your peers and maybe the path they were choosing versus what was going on internally for you in that climate at that time and the direction that you were going to take. What did that feel like? Yeah, and I'm doing that because it feels like
there's a severance. There's a severance. There's a severance. There's a divergence. And again, I come back to education, because had I not been as successful as I had been, I'm not sure what I would have done actually. So there almost became a natural divergence of those paths, because at that point, like looking around at my peers, and literally looking around at my peers,
Mm.
they didn't have the option I had.
Mm.
So they took a different option.
Yeah.
So in terms of separating it, it wasn't too hard,
Okay.
if you like. You know, there's like a growing apart.
So it was almost happened organically, really.
Yeah.
I guess for you, you know, you were, and then maybe blessed with the fortitude to actually, you know, go down a route where education really served you well. And obviously I'm guessing that your context and your upbringing and who you were around and stuff all played a role in that, you know, and not everybody has those same contexts, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
To just kind of elaborate on that, actually. So then your peer group naturally changes.
of course.
So
Yeah.
now I'm around other people who are trying to be academic.
Yeah.
Now we're talking about, you know, Act 4, Scene 1 in King Lear. Rather than whatever the other before. Exactly. Yeah. So
you'll save that for another conversation.
yeah. So yeah, you know, you start to move with a different crowd, and that takes you to a different place. Peer group is incredibly
Huge.
important in that.
Yeah. No, that's really good. Well, speaking of peer group, then obviously there's peer group, but there's also peers who are, you know, those who have a significant influence, who are ahead of us, gone a bit further. You know, who are some of those people that you can remember, maybe especially from that time, that had a significant influence that helped to shape the trajectory, the direction that you went on?
Yeah, there are a few people actually who I think about. We had an education consultant come in. I remember this was around year 10, year 11. His name is Stephen Del Sol, actually, and I think he's still around. I see him pop up on like LinkedIn occasionally and stuff. And
shout out,
shout out, Mr. Del Sol.
Brilliant.
He is a real one. He came in to work with like a group of, I think it was a group of black boys, if I can remember correctly. But it was like a kind of academic, social kind of workshop, like a series of workshops. And he really inspired us. Like he knew how to get us inspired. He was so dynamic. Like just watching this, like this older black man just control a room and see us as individuals, not as people to be managed. That's oftentimes what school can be like, actually. How can we manage this individual from 8:30 to 3:30 p.m. or whatever? And I get it, schools are busy and complex places. So there is a level of that. But he provided a kind of different fuel, if you like. So he was instrumental. He's the reason why I started studying, actually. As I said, I could always kind of, you know, get by and pass exams like without really studying. And I started studying. I thought, okay, this is quite rewarding, actually. Like, you know, he's really inspired me to like get the books out and, you know, sort of knuckle down, get my head down. Another key person would be one of my English teachers. Again, shout out Miss Gear. Miss Gear.
Love it.
And I know her first name, but I still can't call her by her first name. It's just one of those things, like just out of respect. Sharon, by the way. She brilliant A-level English teacher, super inspiring. Even the way she gave feedback on your essays, like, you know, just be read all over it. Like, go and change that. You know. So she was great. Another really inspiring figure.
Shout out to Mr. Del Sol, and to Miss Gia. Was it Miss Gia? Yeah. Shout out. Yeah. I think it's just so important, isn't it? I think particularly, you know, when you think about the adults that kind of we come across, you know, at a young age, I guess it can often be overlooked, just the significant impact that they can be having, you know. So I think, so anybody, I guess, you know, working with young people, you know, as you do, and, you know, and I do in some of the contexts that I've been in as well, it's important to remember that, you know. And like you said, it's not just about, yes, there needs to be structure and there needs to be management and all of those things, but ultimately we're dealing with people, you know. and young people will become adults, and they're going to kind of have families potentially and be in the workforce and contribute to society. And the significant role that you're playing in what you've done has been key. But you've seen that in your own life. Those two you mentioned. What would you say, Darren, that you learned from those two individuals?
It's a really good question. From Mr. Del Sol, I think I learned the importance of human connection, and raising aspiration. So he took our aspiration from here and brought it right up here to like level 10, and just the importance of being able to get somebody to see that they can aspire to something greater than they can already see. I think from Miss Gear, my English teacher, was just skill as an English teacher. She was just great. The way she delivered lessons, the way she planned, the way she gave us feedback, her knowledge. Yeah, there was no question that she couldn't answer. That's what it seemed. I'm sure there were, but I think those are the key things that I learned from them.
So the importance of human connection, the idea of being able to inspire and help to raise individuals' aspirations, but just the importance of skill and knowledge in your craft as a teacher.
Yep.
And being able to pass that on, which in a sense is aspirational as well, because that's clearly helped part of your journey as well. All right, so let's fast forward. So we've come out of school, we've gone to A level, we've done A level. You come out of university. What do you do at university? I know you said you did you did your educational studies.
Yeah.
But what did you specialize in?
Yeah. So I chose not to do an education degree.
Okay.
There was the option to do a 4-year B.Ed.
Right.
And I actually thought that was quite limiting. It was quite, for me personally, I wanted to study a subject, like an academic subject, and then do like an education postgraduate degree. So I studied English, BA honors, and then after that, I took a year out working in the community. Again, working in youth arts, which I absolutely love. Like I love the arts, theatre, poetry, music, and then I did my PGCE. Later on, I did a master's in education, leadership, and innovation. So that was a kind of route, after sort of A levels. And
okay, what was the first teaching role you landed, and what was that like?
Yeah, the first teaching role that was in Battersea. So I was at Battersea.
I remember that.
Yeah. Yeah, you came to an event. I invited you to an event, didn't I?
Yeah.
To speak. Yeah. Many years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. And that I had a great time. So I ended up staying there for 5 years. Shortly after my NQ2 year, which your newly qualified teacher year, I got promoted to leading a key stage. So I was working on curriculum development, and they allowed me to grow. They invested in me. They saw potential. They coached me, mentored me. I had a year 7 tutor group, which, absolutely loved. We had an amazing relationship. And I said, right, okay, I'm going to stay with you guys for 5 years. We're going to have this relationship. I'm going to see you through year 11.
Yeah.
And I stuck to my word. It's 5 years. And we loved every minute of it. Mostly, but there were a couple in there that brought on some early aging. But I had a great time there. It was a great community.
Okay,
a great community.
Yeah. Okay, so that was first experience. So let's fast forward now. So you've had that experience with those. You've kept the promise of human connection and consistency with that year 7 group. You see them through to year 11 and beyond. And then fast forward a number of years, you get to 2018.
Yeah.
Okay, so 2018, you make the decision to move abroad with your wife and your children I kind of want to say what's the backstory, but I also want to jump forward and just say what made you say yes to the unknown?
Yeah,
You know,
really.
you know, and what did that kind of season teach you about, I guess, embracing and working with uncertainty?
It had always been sort of cooking in the background, bubbling in my subconscious. I always wanted to work internationally. I thought it'd be really cool. It'd be really interesting. I love to connect with people. I'm very relational. So it had always been there. And even to like Ade, like my wife, it seemed like it just kind of came out of the blue. I'm like, yeah, we're moving. So what? But even like way before then, like this is maybe going back like 2007, I had the opportunity to work in Nigeria. Yeah, to work in international education in Nigeria. And I passed it up. The timing wasn't right. You know, I just got married, you know, I was an adult. You know, I had a mortgage, you know, that thing. So it's like, okay, not yet, but I'm sure the time is going to come. And I've been running like an education business on the side, and I was doing consultancy, and you know, I was running supplementary schools. You know, supporting kids to sort of pass entrance examinations, like 11 plus. I had a whole host of things.
And you had and I remember you had a team, didn't you?
Yeah.
I remember there was a team of you, and that you were leading.
Yeah, that's right. So I had a tutoring agency, and I ended up, through a combination of things, having a legal dispute with a local authority, and that was really stressful. It was a time of a lot of strain, and I had a young family, and it just felt like everything was just sort of, I know, just snowballing, just becoming a little bit unsustainable. And I had a friend who, he was working abroad, and you know, I said, like, you know, what's it like? You know, he said, yeah, I'm having a great time. You know, and he said, look, you know, they're looking for good staff. There's a large group of schools. I think there are like 12 schools in this cluster. And I saw a couple of roles come up, and I thought, okay, let's see where this goes. And then I applied, interviewed, and as they say, the kind of rest is history. In fact, I ended up sort of getting more than I bargained for, because you know, I thought, okay, let me just go and just teach. You know, I've been, you know, in leadership, you know, in the UK state sector for a bit. Maybe I'll just go and teach. So I interviewed, and they said, actually, you know, would like to put you forward for a more senior role. Would you be interested? So okay, I'll be interested. So I ended up interviewing for that senior role, got the job, turned around to my wife and said, hey, look, we're going to the Middle East. And then that conversation happened.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm quite a spontaneous guy.
You don't say.
I'm one of those guys. I'm like throw caution to the wind.
Yes.
Left a yes.
Yeah.
Like, we'll figure it out. And maybe it's a degree of foolishness. They say in order to achieve a degree of success, you have to be deluded. I'm like, yeah, I can make it in the Middle East. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
No sweat. Yeah, Islamic country. I got this.
Yeah.
And I've got all of us. And they say, like, you know, you need to have that kind of self-delusion, because if you see all of the obstacles, you'll never do it. You'll never do it. You'll never start the business. Yeah, you'll never propose.
Yeah.
You know, you'll never become a parent. Like, if you see like all of the challenges ahead, like, I can't face that mountain. Yeah. I'm like, no, we can do this. Actually, we can do this, and we did. We got there. We figured it out. There were obstacles, but we navigated it, and we navigated it together. Which was crucial.
Really important. Yeah. Wow. So Middle East, going into the unknown, embracing the uncertainty, but there's something about throwing caution to the wind. Actually, you know, if there's a kind of focus on, well, what are the obstacles and challenges, that in reality, for some, decisions may never be made. Some options will never even be considered, because you just don't know what's going to happen. And what you've learned is actually going to the Middle East. You guys made it work. You made it work. All right. So you've worked in the Middle East, but you've also worked in Central and Eastern Europe, and obviously now you're back in the UK. I guess I'm curious in terms of Middle East, Central Europe, UK, completely different cultural contexts. What has that taught you in those contexts about, I don't know, cultural responsiveness, cultural sensitivities in your leadership capacity?
I think maybe the best analogy to use is, they say when you're fishing water, you're the last one to discover water. It's like, this is your surrounding. That's all you know. Okay, you take it for granted that this is it. Like, you can't look at it objectively. You can't actually see the water that you're in. You can't feel it. It just exists, and you navigate through that space, and that's your norm. That's your norm. That's your worldview. It taught me that culture is everything, and culture is like the lens through which we see the world, and that determines our worldview. It doesn't mean that any way is particularly right or wrong. It's just culture. And being able to respect that, firstly, being aware of it. Okay, so, what is the culture, right? So I've come with my Western ideals and values, taking for granted that these exist everywhere. This is how everyone sees the world, right? And then you navigate somewhere else where you're actually living there, not just coming into contact with people, but you're actually living there. Actually, no, this isn't how everyone sees the world, and your way might not be right. Actually, it's just a way. So yeah, it's being sensitive to different cultures, embracing different cultures, respecting them. And it takes like a level of agility and, I guess, kind of reflection, being able to stand back and see it through somebody else's cultural lens and understand where they're coming from. So it makes you more empathetic. It makes you more understanding. And the challenge is while still trying to hold on to your values.
Yeah, I guess that is a big challenge, isn't it? How do you maintain what your core values are based on your context of origin, where you've been raised and what you've learned, and then you're in a completely different culture? What steps did you take to help you, I guess, one, become more aware, come to a place where you appreciate that actually there is no necessarily right or wrong, it's just different, it's just a way? What steps did you take to come to that place where you could do that in such a vastly different culture?
Mistake making and being able to have a conversation with somebody afterwards. Okay, so you've upset somebody because you've done something that they've perceived as offensive, inappropriate, or sort of overstepping a cultural boundary. Being a more active listener, so understanding why somebody feels offended. And then you begin to observe, as you learn more, you begin to observe the norms and the values, thinking about your actions, thinking about your words before they land, sort of kind of preempting, okay, how will that be seen through this cultural lens? There's some really kind of good practical tools. So they call it I can't remember how many dimensions. I think it's like 6, 7 dimensions, but Hofstede's cultural dimensions. So Hofstede is like a kind of social scientist, anthropologist. And he said, by and large, there are 6 or 7 dimensions that appear across all cultures, all societies, but in different degrees. So, for example, one is called power distance. So, what's the relationship between like the average person and authority?
Right. Yeah.
Some countries are high on the power distance index. You don't question leadership. Okay, you don't challenge authority. Yet in the West, UK, let's go UK centric. We're used to that. Like, we can lobby our MPs. We see political debates taking place. We can elect our leaders, right? And to a degree, we can hold our leaders to account. Okay? That's not the case in every country, actually. So there are these different dimensions, and then just And again, they're broad brushstrokes. They're not rules. They're
Mm,
averages, and people fall, outside of averages. But they give you a kind of a broad brushstroke to, I guess, fairly dominant values and
mm,
sort of attitudes. So
mm.
understanding that, it doesn't mean that you'll make fewer mistakes, but you'll have a little bit more understanding about, okay, why did somebody behave in that way,
Yeah.
either to somebody else or towards me? And actually, when I've said such a thing or done such a thing, why was it perceived that way? That's completely not what I intended.
Mm, mm.
That's why.
That's fascinating and a really helpful framework to look at things through. I guess it kind of leans me towards thinking about this idea of, you said the power, you say
Power distance.
power distance. And in some cultures, there's not really a questioning of leadership. What comes to mind for me when you say that is I wonder what it was like for you coming from a UK centric context where you've led, you've probably had experience of lobbying, etc. And then you go to a completely different context where that power distance is increased. Potentially, I'm
Mhm.
thinking, yeah, I'm guessing it's increased. That index that you described. How did you navigate saying yes and saying no
Mm,
when
mm,
things were being required of you
mm,
from those who were in leadership over you in those contexts? What was that
mm.
like?
That was really difficult, actually. And I found that one of the most difficult things because I'm a really values driven leader. And I believe the more you compromise your values, how much do you allow to seep in to your own sort of attitude and your own values? Because okay, you compromise here, you compromise there, and then you turn around and you realize like you've done some things that you're really not proud of in your leadership. You've made some decisions that actually they're counter to your values. So I found that really challenging, and there are times where I've had to go out on a limb and
Mm,
say I'm not doing
mm,
that.
mm,
Yeah,
mm,
maybe somebody else might do that for you, but I'm not going to do that because I'm going to rest on my values, and that's caused friction. Actually, that's caused tension, and I've had to make decisions to step away from positions,
okay. Okay.
and yeah, and that's quite difficult, and being away from home as well. It's like being in a different country. When you make those kinds of decisions, I would say they're more high stakes. They're more high stakes because you've got a lot resting on the line.
Mm,
You've taken your family, you've
yeah.
up sticks, and
Mm,
you've gone to make a life somewhere else. And
yes.
actually, when you walk away from somewhere, you've got to navigate that whole landscape again, or
Mm,
you've got to go somewhere else and then try and build a life somewhere else. Which is really interesting because there's a huge debate taking place about the brain drain in England now, and
mm,
how many people are upping sticks for Dubai, Middle East, wherever it is people are going to, how they've got a much better life. But sometimes people don't see the other side of that, actually, the challenges of
mm,
having to navigate different cultural landscape with
mm,
different values. And
mm,
if you're doing that with a family as well, it's
mm.
not like, okay, well, I'll leave this place and I'll go to the place down the road, because actually you don't know the place down the road. this
Yeah.
isn't this isn't your territory. Actually,
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
you're still a stranger.
Mm,
You're still a stranger. So people who are considering moving abroad,
mm,
especially with a family, to think about, okay, what are some of the challenges that people won't share on
of
social
course.
media? As he's
Yeah.
taking selfies by the beach,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you
That's
know,
right.
actually,
Yeah.
what are some of those other challenges that people won't share openly on social media?
Yeah. No, it's very good. It's very good to be considering actually where, those challenges of cultural difference. Um, yeah. They won't necessarily be easy to navigate, and you won't have the same, I guess, community or history to be able to lean on as well in the same way that you would if in your culture or context of origin. And those things, yeah, they need to be considered. That's great. And yeah, just this idea of, recognizing where it was hard to push back, but maintaining your values in your leadership decisions actually required sometimes having to step away, because you're just not really willing to compromise in those areas, because in the compromising, like you were saying, you lose part of yourself. And certainly one of the things that I often have conversations with the people I work with in terms of my clients. That's where we find the kind of tension often, if there is a gap between what we see as our values and the decisions and the choices that we're making, where there's a distance in that, it causes tension and can become highly stressful, and require some tough decisions. But often it's hard to make those decisions in isolation, which is why community and friendships is really important as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
You mentioned family. We've spoken about, there are some unique pressures. Yeah. Raising a family in a completely different culture. I guess it'd be helpful just to maybe hear a little bit about how you have practiced how have you practiced being present as a father and as a husband in those contexts when leadership demands so much of you?
That's a great question. I think some contexts make it easier. So, case in point, I found my time in the Middle East and got huge respect for the Arab world. It's very family oriented. So now coming back to those indexes, those dimensions, they're high on the social, communal aspect. Whereas the UK, we're more isolationist. That's just like, you look on those indexes, as they say, every Englishman's home is his castle. He builds a bit of a fortress, and the bigger the gate, the more you've made it, right? It kind of reflects our individual or individualistic, sort of very capitalistic, striving society.
Self-made man, that type of thing.
Oh yeah. Whereas you go to the Middle East, like, it's so common to have multi-generational households. Great grandparents, parents, maybe uncle, auntie next door, and that reflects their very communal nature. So my time there was wonderful in that regard. It was absolutely wonderful. Like, for a young family, feeling like you just have more time to be present, that was invaluable for me, actually. I look on those years very fondly. So yeah, there are certain, cultural aspects and structural aspects that make that easier. Okay, what about in the absence of that? How do you do that? I think, again, just kind of boring, like scheduling stuff. Scheduling, like, okay, this is the time that I'm going to spend with my kids, with my wife, and that's sacrosanct. That's almost untouchable. I think that's really important. You talk about the buckets, right? And, you've got X amount of buckets. Where do you distribute time for each, bucket? Distribute resources for each bucket. The importance of ritual, I think, is really important. So one of our rituals will be going to church together on a Sunday. And that, on that ritual, hinges so many other things. So on that ritual, after church is, okay, family lunch. And after family lunch, it's family board games or whatever. So it's like, you then begin to stack your kind of habits and, practices, if you like.
Yeah. And each of those practices are facilitating, again, that human connection within a family context.
Yeah.
And strengthening those bonds.
Yeah. And particularly as an educator as well, it's like, with a strong moral purpose, like, you may be in a school with 2,000 kids. And, I remember having a conversation with a good friend of mine. She said, look, if you're not careful, you'll invite all of them into your house at 7 o'clock at night. because whether you're trying to fix this thing and fix that thing, and actually boundaries, the importance of boundaries.
Yeah.
Depending on your kind of personality type, I'm very much because I'm so relational. I like to meet people's demands. Could you do this? I could, yeah, I can do that. Yeah. And actually, the practice for me has been learning boundaries. No, actually, I can't. Yeah, or not yet. Or could you extend the deadline on that? And I've had to practice like really deliberate things, around setting boundaries. I think somebody else could do a much better job than I.
Yeah, I've got somebody in mind who could help you with that.
Yeah, that'd be great. So those are some of the ways I sort of manage that.
That's great, Darren. That's great. Thank you. All right, well, I'm mindful of your time. So let's come into land. All right. And we've got a couple of kind of what I like to describe as almost wrap up questions. Yeah. But important nonetheless. And I think one for me would be, now you're back in the UK, this next chapter, what's kind of most energizing or exciting you about this new chapter now you're back in the UK?
It sounds a bit cliche, but coming back to where it all started, I'm excited by that prospect. I think education is one of the great social levelers, if done right, to give people aspiration, a leg up in society. I'm excited to be playing a role in that again, actually, in this context, particularly at a time where the gap continues to widen between, those who have and those who don't. The class distinctions are becoming more pronounced, and social mobility, the whole concept of social mobility is brought into question. Cost of living crisis, like things are hard. It's challenging economic times, challenging social times. So I'm quite excited to be back in that context and meeting that challenge in the right environment. Actually, I'm excited about that.
Yeah, brilliant.
In addition to impromptu meetups with you, by the way, like nice cafes in Cheltenham.
Come on.
Yeah.
Has to be done, doesn't it?
Pistachio croissants. And,
come on.
Flat whites.
Exactly. Has to be done, brother. Has to be done. I love it. All right, so Darren, so tell us, what did you once believe about yourself or leadership that you now think differently about, or you now view differently?
This was such a hard one. It's like so many things. I'm like, why one? I have three, like top three, even top five. If I had to choose one, because it was a belief that was deep rooted from an early age, and I hope things have changed now. But from an early age, you're kind of led to believe that leaders are born. And you hear phrases like, "Oh, so and so's a natural born leader." They were born to lead. When actually leadership is a skill, and it can be developed, it can be cultivated. So I once believed that, okay, you're born a leader, but now actually it's something that you can cultivate, and you can cultivate it in others. Like you can cultivate it in a 5-year-old. Yeah.
Yeah. Very good. And I would say that's very encouraging for many people, and encouraging and important for many people to hear that it's a skill, something that can be nurtured, cultivated, and developed with intentionality, with patience, with time. And again, what you spoke about in terms of the right education done well can be a great leveler, even in a leadership context. If the right environment, with the right support, leadership development can be cultivated as well, and people can really flourish regardless of their background or their experience or their culture. But no, that's great. Thank you. I guess before we conclude then, before we wrap up our conversation, and then we have to, off the call, arrange another time to get another pistachio croissant. is there anything that you'd like to share? One idea, one thought, one quote to take away to leave with the viewers and listeners before we wrap up?
Yes. Beware of like false assumptions and faulty premises, because from a faulty premise, so many things, like it's like a domino rally, isn't it? It's like you're not one domino and the rest just falls down. From one faulty premise or one false assumption about yourself, it can lead to so many other kind of negative or in fact behaviors that stand in your own way, to things that you might believe about yourself as a person. Leadership might be one of them. Oh, I'll never lead. I'm not in that genetic pool that was born to lead, for instance. And you think about that one faulty premise, it's going to make you miss out on so many opportunities. I'm not going to go for that promotion because it's leadership. No, that's just not me. Or, I'm never going to take responsibility for this thing because actually I'm just not that way inclined. To maybe be more aware of, okay, what false beliefs, false premises might you be standing on and have been standing on for a significant amount of time?
Yeah, great. Yeah, fantastic, Darren. Thank you so much for that. And let me just say thank you for joining me in conversation. Yeah, just bringing your insight, your experience, your openness. Been very generous. For anyone watching or listening this episode of Conversations with Nick, I have no doubt that you would have found some real value in this conversation with my friend Darren Goode. And if you did, I'd love for you to just like, subscribe, and why not leave a comment to let us know what you found most helpful, what resonated, what sat with you most, so that others can chime in as well. Darren, thanks so much. And everyone watching or listening, again, appreciate your time. And see you again soon. Take care.
Thank you, Nick. Been a pleasure.